What's up, dude? It's Joshy J. Today I want to go through talking about thumbnailing. And I really want to get into some of the details of thumbnailing and how we can go about thinking about thumbnailing, and some of the things that I think about when I'm doing character design specifically for thumbnailing. So this video is going to be about thumbnailing for characters. They overlap a little bit when it comes to environment design stuff, but it is very similar to character design. Cool. So you can see in the background, I've got the cyborg mechanic that I drew not so long ago, and then I've also got the sci-fi cyborg, a different character that I designed also not too long ago. But you can see that a lot of the times in the thumbnails, I'm just trying to work out like the general form. And what I'll do is I will paint out and sketch out the first character really well, and then I'll pull it across and then make iterations. And when you're thumbnailing, that's the most important thing, is you want to iterate on what you've built already. And firstly, it saves a lot of time, but also it keeps it very concise. So I've got 2 points here that are first two things you have to do before you even go into starting to thumbnail. So number one is you need to have a statement of intention, which means you have to have direction, and this is something that you think about before. So say for example, I'm designing something for like League of Legends. I know their aesthetic is a certain type of a way, and my statement of intent is maybe like, I want to design a redesign of fiddlesticks from League of Legends. That's my statement of intent. And then the second thing you need to do is just collect all your reference. And I have two monitors here. I've got my Huion and my other screen, and I have my reference up on one screen. And then when I go into Paint, I can just flow through it. And the thing is, when you're creating thumbnails, you want to go really quickly with them as well. You don't want to spend too much time on one. So you'll see these thumbnails that I'm going through here. I'm going through them very quickly, but yeah. So I would build. So as I was saying earlier, I would take the first one that I built, and then I would literally take that exact one, copy it over to the side, and then redesign it so that it looks distinct enough. To be honest, with these designs that you're actually seeing now, I probably didn't differentiate too much. I could have differentiated a little bit more. The further designs that you're going to see, they're actually a bit more different and they're a bit more distinct. But I really wanted to build a cyborg, not even a cyborg, it was a full robot, this guy. He was a full robot mechanic. And I really wanted to design him to have these almost flamethrower things with these like gas tanks on his back. Initially I wanted to have all of these like tools hanging off him like this, and I did have a lot of reference off to the side. So those two things are really important, to have your direction and collected your reference. And you really want to, you don't want to dive into details at all. I'm actually probably zooming in a little bit too much with these particular thumbnails, but you really don't want to zoom in. You want to stay zoomed out, and you want to just get the general impact of the character, and also how the one thumbnail is different from the other thumbnail. That's the most important thing, is you want to make sure the thumbnails are very different from each other, but still sticking in the same goal and still staying with the same focus of the character that you're trying to design. And this is an important thing to think about. And I think I started to get it a bit more in flow with it with the next one. But the reason why we do thumbnailing is to be able to reach levels and to be able to come up with ideas that we wouldn't come up with initially. And I used to have this in my first 2 years of study, even the first 3 years of study. I was always like, my first idea is always the best. And while it might be true, there are different versions and different ideas that you kind of come up with when you iterate. And the iteration part is the most important part when you're doing thumbnailing. So when you iterate, it is the exploration part, and this is the phase where you're allowed to make mistakes, you're allowed to try things that might seem completely ridiculous. And some of them actually work, some of them don't. And that's why it's an exploration phase, because you want to design something, pull off a copy, let that one go and redesign it and add in different plates here, or add in like a gun there, or change the plating on his face, or change like the color of his pants, like you see, like I'm doing in this one here. And change the different masks that they're doing, the different functionalities of the different components that are on him. And I'm just trying to like explore different ways of articulating the same character. And I want each one to kind of be distinct on its own without going into detail. So if someone looks at these thumbnails, they can be like, so the reason why you do this also is if you're working with an art director, you're giving them a lot of variety, so a lot of things to choose from, and they can be like, oh, I like this from the first one, I like this from number 7, and I was wondering if you could add them together all on like number 8. And it looks like you've done a lot more work, but because you're making copies, you've saved yourself a lot of time of. And another thing why you do thumbnails is you don't want to design the whole character and paint it out and then you send it to your art director and then they're like, oh, actually, can you change this, and you're like, well, I've done a whole painting now and now you want me to change it. So it just saves you a lot of time in the long run as well. And I think also elevating your exploration tendencies is a great thing to do, because it shows you that you still can play, and it shows you that you can still try ideas and still try things that may not work, and the ones that do work are usually the most interesting ideas. And that's why I actually, in the beginning, I didn't really like thumbnailing. I kind of just went straight to design and bypassed the whole thumbnailing stage. Or I would do it, but I was doing it because I have to do it. Now it's like, I'm going to do it because it's going to enhance the design at the end. And these thumbnails now of this character, this female character that you're seeing going on in the background, actually, I'm so glad I did a lot of thumbnails for her, because the beginning ones, I mean, they looked cool, they looked pretty cool, but there was just so many more interesting things that I started to come up with along the way. To be honest, I could have pushed her hair features a bit more. I kind of stuck with the same hair. I changed the color a little bit, but I could have pushed the hairstyles a little bit more as well. But that robotic arm, so that's another thing to remember, or to realize when you're doing thumbnails, is when you design one thing and there's one component of one thumbnail that works really well, you can just keep that. You don't need to change it, because you know that that's like something you really want to keep. But then you can iterate and try different things on the other one. And I actually keep all of my thumbnails. I don't throw them away, because I feel like I can then use bits and pieces of one design and then pull it through into another thing. And when you do a lot of thumbnails, you have a lot of work like behind your name that you haven't used, that are just like some ideas you've touched on. And you build up this library of, also a library of exploration that you've then tried, that then sticks in your head, because you're like, oh, maybe I can like remember this and try this next time, you know? And it's really good to have that, because the exploration part, so that's why we do concept art. That's why concept artists actually have a job. We're not illustrators, we're here to generate ideas, and we're here to help our art directors and help people with interesting visual imagery that they couldn't think of themselves. The reason for illustrators is to be able to render those things out beautifully, and so strict. So this is strictly concept art. This is probably the most concept art heavy video I think I've done, because there's not going to be any rendering in this video. It's just the ideas. It's just a lot of different ideas, and I think if you can fall in love with just generating ideas, you know that concept art is a thing that's for you, that's worth pursuing. And I really knew that when I realized that I started to just prefer doing the thumbnails over the final render, you know. And that's how I knew that I really was just kind of more leaning towards concept art. And even if you are an illustrator, I mean, most professional illustrators would know this, that they need to kind of generate thumbnails before they get to the final thing, and you start to love both. I still love the painting process and the rendering process of doing illustration, but I just know that the design turns out better when you create a whole lot of thumbnails. And I think I should do a video also about environment thumbnails as well, because they're just as important to do. And you also get to explore different lighting scenarios and different composition settings. So that's one thing that this video won't have, or doesn't have, is it doesn't have composition, because we're just designing a character. That's all we're doing. We're just going on hardcore design. And the reason why it's keeping it so simple and keeping it so loose is because I don't want to get attached to one thing. I just want to be able to generate a lot. And I think I know a lot of designers keep their thumbnails very gestural. So that means they don't even go this detailed on it. This is actually considered pretty detailed when it comes to thumbnailing. But I know a lot of people keep it very gestural, and it's more loose than this. They zoomed even further out. And it's probably a good thing to do, but it just depends on how you like to do thumbnails. And I know for me, at least, I like this way of doing thumbnails, and I feel like I can still go fast while doing thumbnails like this. And you'll see with a lot of these ones that you saw now, I had a lot of blocked out shapes, and that's another thing to consider when you want to keep the impact really high, is you want to block out the shapes so that they're very distinct, and making sure the impact is quite high. And when we talk about shapes, you really want to think of things in big, medium, and small. So you want to have the big shapes, medium shapes, and small shapes. There's a lot of tutorials on the internet that go over big, medium, and small shapes. And I think in the future, I will do one more in depth on big, medium, small. But so basically in these thumbnails, I was just trying to get the impact of working out what shapes are working well together and which ones aren't. And I think I turned out with a pretty good end result. So yeah, these are some of the things on thumbnails that I thought would help you guys when you are creating characters. And I'd love to see and hear about how you guys cooked up some thumbnails, if you did. And if you have any video requests that you want me to make in the future, I would love to hear from you guys. But otherwise, I will check you guys in the next one. Cheers.